Welcome, everybody, to the Gracious Guest Podcast, and I am not just a gracious guest, or trying to be, I should say, a gracious guest in this life, but your humble host, Mike Creevy. Delighted that you have taken some time out of your day, or maybe you've not really taken time out of your day, you're just sort of bringing me along wherever you're at. So I am happy and very honored, as always, to be a guest in your world, a guest on your mobile device, a guest on your web browser, a guest, whatever the case may be, in terms of how you're tuning in to this program. So I'm excited, needless to say. If you're unfamiliar with this podcast, you can learn a lot more by going over just to my website. First of all, it's thegraciousguest.org. Pretty easy to remember. And I have a host of things over there. I've got YouTube videos, I've got podcasts. You can get the podcast feed from the website. You can go and look it up on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or Podbean, various other ways to get this podcast. So if you like the program, or at least parts of it, feel free to share it with your friends, get them to subscribe, trying to spread the word. And really what this show is all about is a recognition that we are all guests. Guests in life, guests in this world, wherever you are, whatever your circumstances are, whatever your situation is, however good or bad your life seems to be, what kind of suffering you're going through, or if you're going through a period of great blessing and fortune, whatever the case may be. We only get this life, this one shot here to journey through life and to appreciate creation all around us. I am, full disclosure, Catholic. I take it very seriously. I love our Lord Jesus Christ. I love His church. And I am a youth minister, radio personality, behind-the-scenes radio guy at a local Catholic radio station. I've taught Catholic theology in various settings, including high school for 4 years. I've mowed lawns. I've done all kinds of things. I was in the Army for a while. I was a officer in the Army for 8 years. That was pretty cool. I went to Iraq for a year, just because they told me I had to. I was deployed for a year, and yeah. So, anyways, I tend to just approach life with, like all of us, with all of my experiences and background, just kind of as part of who I am. And one thing I've noticed in life is that things are always better, even when they're awful. Things are always better when I am willingly open to receiving an awareness of or paying attention to the transcendent, which could be right around the corner at all times. Transcendent meaning, in the way I'm using it here, just in basic terms, that which is beyond what I can sort of immediately, tangibly perceive. A mystery, right? Like I see a beautiful sunset and I'm just hit with this experience that is radically disproportionate to just the sort of nuts and bolts material reality of a gigantic burning ball of gas just moving. You know what I mean? Like it's if we have a reductionist view of life, we'll miss out on so much meaning that life around us has, and that's what Gracious Guest is all about. And any number of ways that we can kind of find that deeper meaning, find those deeper experiences of those aha moments, those moments that cause us to kind of pause and just reflect on something important in life, So because of that, I do a lot of different stuff. I talk about Star Wars, the joy that brings to me, just for a lot of reasons. Book reviews, movie reviews, theological, philosophical insights, maybe occasionally dabbling into the news a little bit, but not as much, because I like to just sort of consider the bigger picture, the context, and that's what this show's all about. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. And today, we are talking about why I love Lent. Yes, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Lent, I'm just going to give you a quick little refresher here. I've done this before, talking about Advent in the 4 weeks before Christmas. It's not always 4 weeks, but just those weeks, not always four full weeks, but that preparation time, basically right after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, in the Christian tradition, that a lot of people miss out on because we don't do it the way it was intended, to do it the right way, to get the most out of it. Lent is much bigger and a very, very important season in the Catholic Church and in other Christian communities as well. And there's a whole rich history to it. I'm not going to get a lot of detail. I'm just going to kind of maybe go knee-deep in some of this and just share with you a little bit more personally about why I really enjoy Lent and some of my struggles and what I'm hoping to, experience this Lent. But before we do that, I want to check in with our field correspondent, my daughter Noelle. So Noelle is a little older than 2 right now, and the other day I caught up with her because she was on her little toy phone, and she seemed very absorbed in it. And I wanted to see what that was all about. So anyway, check it out. Noelle, our field correspondent, is on a little mission here. We're checking out a room. What do you think about this room? Yeah? You think so?
Yeah.
Oh, you have a phone call? Who's on the phone?
I don't know.
Go ahead and see who it is. Can you say hello?
Daddy, no, I'll go back there over there.
Wait, do you want me to go over there while you're on the phone?
Yeah.
Wait, can you show me where I have to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain it to
I'll
me?
go right there.
You want me to go all the way
Yeah.
15 feet away from you across this room?
Yeah.
Why don't you want me to come with you?
I don't know.
You just want to be alone on the phone?
Yeah.
Wait, is that your boyfriend?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Should Daddy just go ahead and leave you alone so you can be on the phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Say, don't forget to wonder.
Don't get the water.
Now, I'll tell you, folks, I am a little nervous. I'm a dad. I've got a little girl. She's already on the phone, not telling me who she's talking to. Well, we'll see. So pray for me. Anyways, let's dive in here. Why I love Lent. First, I just want to kind of share a little bit about what we're talking about here. If you're unfamiliar with Lent, or you've kind of heard of it before, but you're not really up to speed on it, there's a couple things to point out. And I'm pulling a lot of this, by the way. I'll put these links in the show notes. There's some really useful infographics and just very cool summaries that I find very fun, and just the way it's displayed that really help break down Lent that churchpop.com has posted. So I'll put a couple links to these for you, and they've got a lot of great stuff over there I recommend checking out. But so just check out the show notes later for some of these links I'll mention throughout. So they have an article right here called "The Meaning of the Liturgical Season of Lent in One Infographic." So they put this together last year. They normally have something each year, and it's pretty cool. So it just kind of goes through, what is it? So first of all, it's a liturgical season. In other words, it ties into the religious calendar. So if you don't know what liturgical, it's related to liturgy. So it's a calendar that, in our case, the Catholics follow throughout the year, that there are different feast days and different seasons where we reflect on different things about the gospel, different things about the spiritual life, that kind of thing. So it's a liturgical time of preparation for the celebration of Easter. And I'll talk about Easter more in a couple of weeks. I'm recording this right now on March 1st, and Lent begins next week. So I'll post this so you'll be able to hear it from the first day of Lent, which is Ash Wednesday, March 6th, forward. So I'm recording this a little early. And hopefully, by the way, by then I'll have some of the things I'm going to bring up later figured out in terms of my preparation, what I want to do for Lent. So anyways, it's a liturgical time of preparation for the celebration of Easter. Easter is, as much as we love Christmas, Christmas is maybe my favorite time of year, but Easter is the sine qua non, use a fancy Latin term, of Christianity. I don't want to get too far afield on this, but Christianity is, quite frankly, meaningless if the resurrection of Jesus Christ at a specific date and time in real human history actually happened. Paul talks about that in the New Testament. I don't have the reference in front of me here, but he basically says, I'm paraphrasing, that if the resurrection of Jesus is not real, or if it did not actually literally happen, if Jesus Christ did not literally come back from the dead and rise in glory with his glorified body for all eternity, okay? Theology sort of not even 101, that's basics. If that's not true, then he says Christians, he's referring to Christians, he says, then we of all men are to be pitied. Okay, so there's no real two ways about that. So Easter is the absolutely most important Christian feast. Nothing comes close. So Lent is preparation for Easter. And in the early years of the church, I'm continuing on from the Church Pop infographic, it sort of had a flexible duration. It wasn't really until around somewhere in the 4th century when the duration was fixed at this 40-day penitential kind of practice, which there's a lot of biblical basis for. So, for example, you think of in the Old Testament, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. It took, where's it at here? I'm looking at some other stuff. I'll link. This is from Father Felix Just's CatholicResources.org, some great stuff. The prophet of Ezekiel laid on his side for 40 days to symbolize the sins of the people of Judah. Goliath taunted the Israelite army for 40 days. There's tons of different references all through the Old Testament for 40 days. Moses, though, spent 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai when God was giving him the law. Jesus spends 40 days in the desert. Also back with Moses, they spend 40 years in the desert and they're wandering. So the number 40 is very significant, and it's always tied to penance somehow, some kind of penitential significance. Jesus, of course, we have to be careful. He doesn't have any sins to be, offering penance for, but it's showing his solidarity with the human race, that he is taking on this sort of suffering for our sake in this sort of penitential way, this sacrificial way. So the color then of Lent is purple. You'll see purple a lot throughout Lent, through the 40 days. And so it's a symbol of repentance. Purple's a penitential color traditionally. Lent starts on Ash Wednesday. In this case, this year it's March 6th. And it's not the same day every year, and that's a little confusing for people, and that's a whole other thing. But bottom line, the way we celebrate Easter affects, obviously, then when Lent begins. So Easter is it's held on it's the first Sunday after I believe it's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. So that's, astronomy stuff. That's when that's set, so that's kind of how it's set, and that's why it shifts every year a little bit. And then you just backtrack. The 40 days prior to Easter Sunday is Lent. Now, to be clear, though, if you do the math on it, and you look at, so this year I'm looking at a calendar quick, so Easter Sunday is on Sunday the 21st of April. So April 21st, 2019. Ash Wednesday is March 6th. Well, there's more than 40 days between March 6th and Easter Sunday. So what's going on here? So the way it works is, again, remember how I said Easter is the most important, celebration. You may not know this, but in the Catholic tradition, every single Sunday is sort of a reliving of Easter Sunday, the glory of the resurrection of Jesus. It's the day of the resurrection. So Sundays in Lent don't actually technically count as part of the Lenten sacrifice, the Lenten penitential season, because nothing trumps Sunday, ever, not even Lent. So that gives you a couple extra days in that overall range. So you're looking at basically the weekdays and Saturdays from Ash Wednesday all the way up till right before Easter weekend. And so it ends on Holy Thursday, because that begins the tradition of what's called the Triduum, Triduum, the Easter Triduum. So it's the three sort of major days, starting with a vigil on Thursday. So Holy Thursday, so in this year that's going to be on Thursday, April, let me look here, Thursday, April 18th. So what happens is basically Lent ends then, and then you have the vigil, meaning like at night, it's kind of the preview of the next day. So you have the Holy Thursday, you have some celebrations that night. That's the commemoration of the night that Jesus went out to the garden where he was ultimately arrested, and then it's the night of the Last Supper and the night that he's arrested. Then Good Friday, the day where he suffers his passion, his crucifixion, and he's nailed to the cross and dies on the cross on Good Friday. So that's the 19th this year. And then you have Holy Saturday, okay, which is that mysterious day where Jesus is dead and he's in the tomb, okay? And it's a whole other cool thing we can talk about later. And then, of course, first thing in the morning on Sunday, you have the resurrection. You have Easter Sunday. So Lent, basically, if you do the math on that, it's 40 days if you go from Ash Wednesday up to Holy Thursday, not counting the Sundays. Okay? With me so far? So that's how it works. So the number 4, and this is just from Church Pop too, which is cool. 40 here, another aspect of this. The number 4 symbolizes the material universe, followed by the zeros, meaning the time of our life on earth, followed by trials and difficulties. So there's some cool other things. There's a lot of tradition here and everything, obviously, mixed into all this. But 40 has this very important character all throughout the Bible and really through the centuries down to us to this day. It's something we really inherit from our sort of Jewish roots in the Catholic faith. So that's the background of Lent. And then just real quickly, then one of the penitential things that's in Catholic tradition is the practice of abstinence. And abstinence, sometimes people immediately think of it in terms of a sexual connection, the abstaining from sexual activity. That's just one application of the word abstinence. Abstinence is a much bigger term. So the abstinence rules for Lent, and I say rule, people, oh, it's a rule. Well, people don't complain about the rules in sports. Maybe you do a little bit, but, you need them to set up parameters for what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so whatever, that's another talk. So this is also on Church Pop. They have a really cool breakdown of the fasting and the traditional penitential activities of really going back to Judaism and really all through the Christian tradition. And the Muslim tradition in some ways kind of picked it up from Christianity. But that's a whole other conversation. But prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So prayer, our communion, our communication with God, being open to God and voicing our heart to Him, having that sort of conversation with God, being with Him in His presence. That's really prayer. Fasting, the idea of I'm giving something up, I'm foregoing something, some good thing. Okay, that's important. Like, oh, I'm not going to rob banks this Lent. Woohoo! Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want you to rob banks, but that's not really fasting because you're never supposed to rob a bank. There's never a reason to, and it's never okay. Okay, like I'm gonna give up cheating all of my employees at my business this Lent. Well, I'm glad, but that's not morally praiseworthy. So fasting is about giving up something good for a greater good. So I give up. One year I gave up cream and sugar in my coffee. Well, cream and sugar aren't evil, that's perfectly fine. But I'm making that sacrifice because that's hard for me to do. I'm sacrificing that, and I'm committing that sacrifice, which is very tiny in the grand scheme of things. People are making a lot bigger sacrifices in the world than that, But I give up something good, and I sort of commit that act, an act of love, for some special purpose, for some need that someone else has in the church or in the world, or some intention. So that's how they're linked. And then almsgiving, similarly, providing somehow for the needs of others. Maybe that's financial, maybe it's your time, whatever it is. So they're all connected. So traditionally, Catholics, they abstain from meat. We abstain from meat. Fish is okay. So no mammals or no fowl, right? So no steak, no pork, no chicken, pheasant. Okay, so fish is okay. For the food-related abstinence practice, it's no meat, and fish is okay. And then fasting is one regular meal and two smaller meals that together do not equal the regular meal in size. Now, honestly, folks, that's just healthy, so this is really not that hard. And there's special provisions if you're younger. I think, I don't have it in front of me. I think if you're younger than 14 and older than if you're younger than 14 and if you're older than 48, you're basically because of your age, if you're a kid with nutrition, and then if you're older, some of the dietary needs, you're sort of dispensed from this. But typically, if everybody else is really expected to kind of do this as part of a good practice for the good of the church, for prayer. So you basically do no meat and fasting. So in other words, abstinence and fasting on 2 days: Ash Wednesday, okay, to kick off Lent, and on Good Friday, the day that Jesus died on the cross. Okay, every Friday in between those two is abstinence. So in other words, no meat. Okay, but not fasting. It's not required. You certainly may. So anyways, some people get that confused sometimes. It's like every year, it's like, wait, do we do the whole fasting thing every Friday in Lent? So, for those who think the Catholic Church is overly rigid, this is nothing. So now that being said, it might be more challenging for some than others, but it's very doable. And I tend to like it because, if nothing else, it forces me to kind of have a consideration outside my normal kind of humdrum routine. It kind of challenges me to think about others. It challenges me to remember what season we're in, why we're doing this. So that's one thing I really like about this in Lent. Another thing that I've tried to do starting in the last couple of years is, and you hear different theories about this and different takes on it. It's not really one set way you have to do it, but you're encouraged then for Lent, broadly speaking, to give something up, right? That's part of fasting also. So not just food, but like giving up something. It can be food related, sort of as an additional thing. But that's particular to you, like a particularly challenging thing that's doable. You don't want to, like, I'm going to give up all sin for Lent. Great, we should all, right? But again, like that, how achievable is that? I mean, if we could just give up sin altogether with no help from God, why we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place, right? So long story short, what I've started trying to do in the last, like, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now, fairly consistently, and I don't always do very well with it, I'll be honest with you, it's always a challenge. I try to give something up and to take some good thing on, like a balance. Because I think those are both important, the idea of best practices in the spiritual life, right? And almost like a New Year's resolution in a way, like being able to, okay, 40 days, I may not be able to do this for the whole year, but for 40 days, I can read from the Bible for 15 minutes before I turn my phone on in the morning. Okay? Everyone can do that. If you're like me, even as I said that, you might start to immediately think of excuses. We're so attached to those things. You may want to get up right first thing in the morning and turn your phone on and listen to the Gracious Guest show. I mean, I don't blame you, right? But just wait. Spend 15 minutes with Jesus before you spend time with me telling you things. Okay, so, but whatever it is, I mean, email, texts, family emergencies, okay, but 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Like, I'm going to read, I'm going to get up, get a cup of coffee, do 10 minutes of the Bible before I turn my phone on every day. Okay? That's not necessarily that easy for everybody. And God knows that, and He will love and bless the tiny childish gift you can give to Him. And anyone who's a parent out there listening to this, you know what that's like, right? Your kid comes up and gives you something that's just funny. Like my daughter the other day, she comes up, Noelle just gives me like a rock. She found a rock outside. And I'm like, and I was like, oh, great. And then later on, I just kind of put it back in the driveway because it's just a rock. But for her, it's like, Daddy, here's a rock. Like, oh, thank you, honey. And that's not me being disingenuous to her. It's, I'm acknowledging this act that she's just done, this act of generosity. It's not about the thing itself necessarily. It's about the relationship. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So, you give something up for the Lord and take something on, so maybe you have you want to give up being on your phone too much. And then you kind of, to help that, you say, okay, I'm going to turn my phone off every night at 8, and then I'm going to read the Bible for 10 or 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So you can have like a balance there. And so anyways, it's just a fun, fun. No, well, Lent's not supposed to be fun. That may not be the best word. It's an incredibly important and rewarding, I think, experience. And quite frankly, guys, even if it weren't rewarding in that sense, because we get a lot out of Lent when you do it right, But that's not even the point. I mean, the bottom line is we are sinners. Every one of us, we are sinners. We do not deserve anything. We do not deserve God's love. We do not deserve heaven. We do not deserve forgiveness. You don't, I don't, no one does. Okay? We have to learn that. Everything is grace. Everything is God's providence. His absolutely unmerited, sort of outpouring of love and forgiveness and mercy to us. We never deserve it, ever. So it's absolutely something that we should try to remember in Lent. That's something I'm going to try to, whatever I end up doing, I don't have my final plan together yet, but I really want to focus on that this year and really try to be thankful, to be grateful first, rather, okay, God, you give me X, Y, and Z, and then I'll be grateful. No. If God never gives you anything in the world that you asked for, just the fact that you exist and the fact that He offers you entirely this forgiveness of your sins if you'll come to Him and the potential to live in heaven forever with Him. He doesn't owe you anything. He doesn't owe you that. He certainly doesn't owe you, goodies along the way. He is so generous I know I don't nearly appreciate that enough. So maybe that's something, whatever your particular penance is, your fasting, your almsgiving. This Lent, I encourage you, I encourage all of us to keep that open channel with God. Try to grow in prayer, spend time with Him, make it put it on your calendar, make it a schedule to spend time in prayer with Him, and He will blow your mind with your Lenten experience. I guarantee it. He's done it many times before for me in the past, and most of the time it's not what I expected. So that's something to keep in mind too. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. There's so much more I want to say about Lent, and I'm already way over what I intended to be here, but just suffice it to say, Lent is incredibly important, incredibly powerful, deeply rooted in history and tradition, and just a really amazing experience that is with us every year, and a great opportunity for us to grow closer to the Lord and to one another. So, this is Mike Creevy, host of The Gracious Guest Show, webmaster over at thegraciousguest.org. Go ahead and check it out. Shoot me an email if you want at thegraciousguest@gmail.com, or you can always fill out the contact form on the website right at the bottom of the main page if you want to get in touch with me that way. I really want to encourage you to do that. I want to hear how you guys are doing this Lent. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, if you want to give me some feedback on the show, which I really appreciate. If you have not done so, please also, if you could go to iTunes and give the show a good review over there, I'd really appreciate that. That really helps kind of get my mission spread and get this out there and get us connected, because it's about a network. It's about all of us growing in a contemplation, appreciation of truth, goodness, and beauty wherever they can be found. And until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.